This week, as expected, Stephen, President Obama's jobs plan failed to pass the Senate. With an election in November 2012, just over a year away, are we looking at another major overhaul in Congress and perhaps the White House? Are we looking at a situation where voters might say, throw all the bums out?
Yeah, we are, Ali. I mean, I've been looking at these numbers. You have, too. I've never seen incumbents in Washington so unpopular. Even more unpopular, remember, than in 1994 when we had a big election when we threw the bums out. So this is not a good time to be an incumbent, whether you're a Republican or Democrat. Some of the political pros I'm talking to are thinking that as many as 100 incumbents in the House could lose, which would be a near record.
So for conservatives like you, for fiscal conservatives like you, what is the best strategic way to achieve your goals, given that everybody's mad at everybody right now?
Well, look, I do think that it starts with the president. And, you know, I don't think that this plan that he put forward is a serious jobs plan. I mean, to increase tax rates, I think, would actually hurt the economy. And Republicans were never going to go for a big new spending plan. So I don't think the president really put this out there as something he thought would pass, but rather as kind of a political document. I do think there's still a chance, Ali, that there might be a smaller package that passes sometime in the next month or 6 weeks that might be that payroll tax cut, which is part of what the president wants, and maybe some, other infrastructure spending, but much scaled back. I don't know if it's going to do enough to stop this real slide in the economy that continues to seem to get worse.
You're optimistic because in the next 6 weeks, they're also going to have to deal with this super committee.
But let me just say one quick thing. Yeah. At least, you know, we did have a bipartisan triumph this week, and that was these trade deals passed. And I'm a big fan of those. I think they will create jobs. And those were 3 trade deals with countries like Korea and Panama that we had a president that was for it, and Republicans in Congress were for it. So sometimes bipartisanship happens.
All right. Stay right there, Stephen. Chrystia Freeland is the editor of Thomson Reuters Digital. Chrystia, Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner says he's disappointed in President Obama. Listen.
I can't tell you how dangerous our situation our economy is in, and how dangerous the situation in Europe is. And yet the president, some 14 months before the election, throws in the towel and decides he's going to spend all of his time out campaigning.
If you recall, Chrystia, during the debt ceiling debate, the president was saying the same thing of Congress. I'm here. Why don't you come back and deal with this problem? What do you make of this?
Well, there is a certain pot calling the kettle black here, right? Isn't there, Ali? I'm disappointed in everyone in Washington right now. I mean, I do think that Boehner is right in one thing, that now is a moment when America needs very decisive leadership, and the world needs it. And I think sometimes, you know, when we look at what's happening, you know, at the fragility of the U.S. economy, at what's happening in Europe, it's easy to throw up your hands and say disaster is inevitable. But actually, it's not. Good policy right now could save the world. And so I share the disappointment, but I think that Boehner is equally to blame.
You make a very good point that our next guest has written about. David Gergen is CNN's senior political analyst. And David, I'm paraphrasing your words, but you have actually said that this isn't like a hurricane. This is a public policy matter. These are things that can be undone. Trust in government. So Chrystia said she's mad at everybody. Trust in government to do the right thing has hit an all-time low. Take a look at these numbers. When are the politicians in Washington, David, going to realize that the same old way of doing business is not what Americans want? They want a change, of course, and specifically to a point that you've written about, David, the power is in the hands of Americans to change course.
It certainly is, Ali. And if you go to a variety of communities in this country, you see things actually happening that are encouraging. I was just in New Orleans a few days ago, and that city has turned itself around since Katrina. It had a near-death experience, but its politics are better now. The business community is investing. And the schools, there's a huge turnaround going on in the schools. That can happen in some communities, and the mystery is why it's not happening in Washington. And so far, there's just been a lack of will, and I do think that you have to keep throwing the bums out in order to get the message done. I don't see any other way the public can succeed in bringing better government to Washington.
How do you do
except
that?
To say no.
How do you do that, David, effectively? Because what happened in 2008 is people who were frustrated by what they felt was very big government and attracted to a fiscally conservative campaign run by, in many cases, Tea Partiers, but other fiscal conservatives, elected a Congress that got as little done as the Congress before that. So literally, do you just keep throwing the bums out until you get a group that gets something done?
Well, I don't see that the public has much there are many other opportunities or options available to the public. You could, some of the givers could do what Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, has done, and that is to declare a boycott on giving any more money to the politicians. And he's got a bunch of CEOs, got over 100 CEOs who agree with him on that. That can also make a difference. Politicians pay attention to that. But the critical thing, Ali, right now is that the campaign for 2012 has started way too early. Both sides have done this. The Republicans were out there first. You know, there was a time even, you know, as you'll recall, Mitch McConnell said, our most important objective over the next 2 years is to bring down this president. That was a campaign statement early after the 2010 elections. Now the president has gone on the road almost full time. He's no longer governing. What he needs to do is actually restart negotiations, both on jobs, because the Republicans have shown, as Stephen just said, that on some issues like trade, they were the ones who put the votes out there. You know, over 80% of the votes against the trade agreements that the president was pushing for job purposes, over 80% of the votes against in the House came from Democrats. The Republicans won that. Republicans are prepared to sit down with the president on some issues and try to negotiate this out. And secondly, Ali, you know, we've lost sight of this deficit group. Where are they?